Understanding how to get credits approved is a real important part of the business. One of the reasons why is you can put all these efforts in prospecting and finding a good customer, and then all of a sudden you can't get them credit approved. This is where we're going to try to target and see what we can do to help you improve your credit approval percentage. So what is application only? Application only is where you can send in a credit and the leasing company will credit approve it without asking for financials or personal guarantee information or anything like that. It's called a scorecard approval. A scorecard approval is where the credit goes in. Their software reviews the credit. It pulls a Dun & Bradstreet. It pulls Equifax and some other credit reporting out there and is able to come back with an automatic approval that way. So in these situations, if you have a trade up, typically, the approval percentage for those is about 85%. If you have your own MIF and you're upgrading your own customer base, you have about an 85% chance of getting that credit approved. The areas you can get tripped up there would be if they have a poor pay history with that current leasing company. Now, when you get into net new business, that approval number drops down to 55%. And I'll tell you one of the big reasons why it's 55 for net new and 85 for trade up. It's because the information is correct on the trade up when you run the credit. The leasing company already has the correct credit profile on that customer and is able to run it correctly. Whereas on the net new business, a lot of times when people submit the credit application, they're submitting inaccurate information on the credit and then it doesn't get approved. So again, to reiterate, when we talk about application only, it means no financial statements are required. The application alone drives a decision, and this doesn't mean you're sending in a credit application. A lot of times it can just be, if we go down to number 3, the legal name, time in business, payment history, current exposure in the industry. I think it's smart to always get a credit application filled out. That way you can make sure you're getting the correct legal name, the headquarters address, the information, the economics of the transaction. It doesn't mean you always have to send in all the information you get to the leasing company, but it helps you, while you've got the customer willing to share all their information, get everything you can so you don't have to keep going back over and over and then getting what we call deal fatigue. Back to number 2, credit scoring models do all the work. When leasing companies pull credit from Dun & Bradstreet, Experian, and others, that's what reports back. And their system is able to generate a credit approval if that data that's reported by D&B, Experian, and the others does come back good. The main things that they're going to look at when they run that credit through Dun & Bradstreet or Experian: does the legal name match? How many years in business? Payment history. That's where customers who make their payments on time, that gets reported to Dun & Bradstreet and Experian, to the other sources. If they pay slowly, it also gets reported as slow pays. There's a score in Dun & Bradstreet called the Paydex. So if a Paydex is under, say, 70, 74, 75, that's going to be harder to get approved. If it's over 74, 75, then there's a better chance of it getting approved. And then there's the industry. There are high-risk industries that leasing companies do like to avoid. Always be aware of the industries that you're calling on. This could be anything from, say, medical marijuana or dispensaries. I know in the past it's also been mortgage companies, even airlines for a bit there, car dealerships. So just be aware of different industries and what's currently being seen as high risk. It does tend to vary with the economy as it goes up and down. So let's start with the application only for $250,000. A lot of that is marketing hype. Who qualifies for application only up to $250,000? Man, Microsoft, Amazon, UPS. What do all those companies have in common? They're publicly traded. Their financials are online. Those Dun & Bradstreet and Equifax and all the other companies have extensive information on them, so they're able to pull that data pretty easily. State and local governments, same thing. Large healthcare systems, everybody that's got a lot of information online, they're able to pull that and make a decision. Now, if you go into a muffler shop who's been in business for 10 years, are you going to get them approved for $250,000? Probably not. You're probably a more realistic number is going to be $50,000 to $75,000. That's going to be a more realistic number for you to set your expectations to. It's about setting the expectations with your customers too. Instead of saying, oh yes, our lessors have $250,000 app only, we'll have no problem getting you approved. You're talking to a 2-location accounting company who's been in business for 10 years, and you're trying to get $80,000 approved application only. Time in business is really an important factor you're always going to have to consider. Now, when you're at 0 to 2 years, it's deemed as high risk, and it's a startup business, and a high percentage of startup businesses fail. 2 to 5 years, the risk goes down. Once you get to 5 to 10 years, it's lower risk. 10 plus years is the strongest, and it's easiest to get those credit approved. It's also because the more years there's more data that's been out there and able to get to the correct reporting agencies. You can have a company who's been in business for 5 years, and there may not be enough credit reported to the credit agencies out there, even though they do have good credit, the good time in business on there. So that's part of the area where the time in business does create a longer paper trail, or it's easier for them eventually to all be found and for a credit profile to be built. Next, make sure you're asking for the right amount of money. Don't come in there with the pie in the sky saying, I'd like to get, $100,000, but your transaction you really only need to get is maybe $35,000 or $40,000. Only ask for what you need. Don't ask for what you want. Now, we went back into exposure. That's an important part again. So if you're going to go in, you're upgrading and putting in a new lease, and that customer's got 3 other leases with that leasing company, and you're only asking for, say, $25,000, don't just think, oh, it's just $25,000. I should be under the app only category. This should approve no problem. That's not true. You need to understand how many other leases there are and what the total exposure is. So you may be asking for $25,000, but if that customer's got $70,000 in open leases, your exposure is $95,000. And that may push you up into a situation where the leasing company will say, hey, I want to get last 2 years financial statements. I want to get PG information on the principal, bank trades, something. So you got to be aware of what you're asking for. It might be smarter to look at taking that $25,000 and sending it to another leasing company, but that's a different training module we'll do here. Back at the application only, make sure you're getting everything you can and just asking the customer once. If you're having to keep going back, the customer's going to get upset. They're going to feel like their credit is being questioned, their integrity as a business, their success, and they just don't like to keep going back. They're ready to move forward to the solution, and you're still stuck on the credit. Credit's not always a fun conversation, so it's just best to go through, peel the Band-Aid, and get everything you can up at once. Assume $50,000 to $75,000 app only. Don't go for the $250,000. Set the expectations with your customer in the first conversation. You want to get bank, you want to get trades, you want to get everything you possibly can in there. You don't have to get necessarily the PG information. And once you have all that information, that doesn't mean send it all into the leasing company. Send them the minimal amount of information in order to get a credit approved. Ask for what you need, not for what you want. So in conclusion on this, again, app only means no financials, but there are limitations on that. Doesn't mean you have to get tax returns or profit and losses or anything like that, but you do want to get good information on it, including bank and trades. Your realistic app only ceiling, $50,000 to $75,000, unless you're talking to a publicly traded company, state and local government, major healthcare, or a major company. There are obviously opportunities where you can come in and get higher credit limits, but setting that expectation is always a good move. Time in business matters a lot. Make sure you understand how long that customer has been in business. And another thing to make sure you're doing is, has there been a name change? Is it a new division? Understanding the structure of your customer is going to help a lot in helping you get the credit approved. Be aware of exposure. Do they have open leases? If you have a trade up amount in there and you're sending it back into the leasing company, make sure the leasing company understands you have a trade up included, so that exposure is coming off in your new transaction so they don't double count that. Make sure you're setting the expectations with the customer up front. One submission, don't do deal fatigue. Get everything you can from the customer at once. One last part I want to talk about a little bit is personal guarantee requests. A lot of people are scared of those, and I can say as a past business owner, personal guarantees are part of running a business, especially if you're under 2, 3, 4 years in business. I could speak from this from my past. I ran a company I had for 14 years, and I was still PGing stuff into year 14. Personal guarantees do lessen as your time in business goes longer. As a business owner, you're used to personal guarantees being required all the time. And the reality is, for any business owners out there, I remember thinking this is like, I have so many things I'm PG'd right now, it doesn't really matter if I add one more. If my company had some trouble or went under, it really doesn't make a difference. I think sales reps a lot of time make it out worse in their own minds to ask for a personal guarantee. It's the confidence that you have when you present it and say, look, here's a personal guarantee request. Most leasing companies require this. It's just part of the business. I'm sure you personal guarantee things all the time. If a customer is pushing back on that, they're bluffing you. They know they have to PG everything. They PG'd their building lease. They PG'd their truck leases. They PG'd, everything is PG'd in there. When they sit there and push back on an office equipment, CPC or something like that, they know that they have to PG, and they already PG'd everything else.